Good, perfect. So
Okay.
again, thank you everyone for joining. This is the second community gathering event, collaboration and community building. So for the ones that couldn't join us last time, I will do a bit of a recap of what we covered, just very brief summary of what we covered last time. Then thinking about our current approach to change and how in complexity perspectives, this can be quite misleading and can lead us to places that we may not enjoy the outcome of it, right? And then thinking about why collaboration is important and why community building and gathering is important in the context of systems change. And then, of course, I will let you speak about your experience with these topics and how we might enable collaboration in our projects and our initiatives, right? So this is the agenda for today. And I will, as I mentioned, will get started with just of the main takeaways that we had from our previous events. So that was why complex challenges are complex, the title. And then we explored this idea of complexity, and we shared that we live in a world of complexity, and we need to acknowledge that so we can actually move forward with our endeavors towards systems change, right? Because this is there's a different nature to complex challenges compared to the more simple or complicated ones, and acknowledging that enables us to have other ways to perceive the world to be, and then craft better alternatives and better ways to adapt to this context, right? And then in this conversation, we talked about different types of systems. And then in the end, we were talking about the key characteristics of complex systems. And just to recap this last part, and this is what we talked about last time as well, complex systems are flux and unpredictable. They change over time, are very adaptive to their environment. To tackle some of the complex challenges, there's no right answers for it, right? Because of the emergent properties that are inherent in complexity properties. There's no right answers. We need to see what emerges and then be able to craft our initiatives around this emergent phenomena and with this emergent phenomena, right? This idea of unknowns, we don't know what we don't know, and we discover as we go along. Many competing ideas. There are always different views and perspectives, sometimes conflicting perspectives on the same space, trying to understand what this complexity challenge is about, this complex challenge is about. And then there are many voices, there are a lot of information on the same place. So this is the idea of many competing ideas. A need for creative and innovative approaches, because of course this emergent phenomena is not known. So we need to use our creativity and innovation perspectives to be able to use the potential of these events that actually emerge and work with it, right? And then pattern-based relationships. So as time goes by, we understand that there are patterns that are being created over time. And then once we acknowledge and understand some of these patterns, then we can work with it to enable the better solutions or better outcomes in the context of complexity. So these were the main ideas that we covered last time. And I'm just bringing back this topic because it's very important for us to discuss collaboration and what that really is, and how innovation and these creative practices can actually be the key parts of systems change and social innovation. So when we talk about change, right, we normally have this approach to what we do. We have a specific challenge, then we try to come up with solutions, right, in the very linear perspective. And then once we understand more or less our solution, then we try to apply, because in a lot of ways, we want to be the superheroes, right? We want to be the ones with the answer, and we want to be the right ones to deliver that project and then be happily ever after. And this is great in a very linear perspective, in a very linear environment, because there are right answers, as we mentioned before, and these answers need to be discovered and then put in practice, and this can be done by these single projects or single solutions, right? However, we do the same thing in a complex environment, in an environment that's ever-changing, that is, we don't know exactly what are the emergent properties that are happening, and we end up in a world like that. We have a lot of superheroes everywhere, and no one is actually communicating with each other. Everyone has their right answers. Everyone is trying to come up with different solutions and so on, but no one is actually communicating, right? So maybe some findings that we can have here that can be very, very important for the betterment of a complex challenge that we're talking about. If it's not discussed, if it's not put in place in a public space where more people can actually benefit from it, it's going to end up in these silos. We are having one solution here, another solution here that don't communicate with each other, but everyone wants to be a superhero, right? Everyone wants to have that right answer. So this is a bit of the context in where we started to think that, collaboration is a very important and powerful topic to be addressed in the context of complex issues. So what if we could enable these ideas to actually cross-pollinate and build on top of each other? And no, we don't have that right answer. We have a part of the answer that could benefit more people if it's put in the public space, in the public domain. So I put all the references here, by the way, for you to look afterwards. I will leave this presentation with you. But as I was reading this article from Forum for the Future, and it's really good way to think that systems level challenges require systems level response. And of course, the systems level response require collaboration, require community to actually be together and share ideas, share resources, put ideas in, let's say, in crisis, discuss them, and then be able to see something new emerging that is actually more comprehensive than all these different initiatives alone, right? So this is a bit of the background to, I think I can, okay, to what this idea of community engagement, community building is, and collaboration, and why this is important. So just wanted to bring definitions here for us to be on the same page about what we're talking about. And I'm very, very happy to hear if you agree with these definitions as well, if you disagree, and if you've encountered these ideas before in your work life, in your everyday life. So first of all, I would define this community engagement as community engagement seeking to better engage the community to achieve long-term and sustainable outcome, processes, relationships, discourse, decision-making, or implementation. So it's really about bringing some people together towards a long-term and sustainable outcome, right? It's not just a short term, I have an idea, I have the solution, that's it. But it's bringing all these different perspectives together in order to better the overall long-term challenge that is put in place. And then to be successful, it must encompass strategies and processes that are sensitive to the community context in which it occurs. And I think this is a very key question, community context, because again, these challenges don't emerge in isolation, right? They emerge in a specific context with a specific roots in there, and understanding where and how, which is the context in which these challenges emerge is actually essential for our discussion. So community engagement, and I would like to hear your perspective as well. And have you seen this everywhere around you? And collaboration, the act of working together with other people or organizations to create or achieve something. So again, going back to the idea of the superheroes, is really working together, which is not a trivial thing, right? Working together to create or achieve something that it's normally bigger than every individual, right? Be either individual people, individual organizations, because these complex challenges are much greater than every single actor involved. So the only way forward really is collaboration and understanding that emergent properties are welcome in these spaces. So before I continue, I would like to maybe hear from you community engagement and collaboration examples based on these ideas, or if you would like to share another definition of these terms, that's great as well. But examples of where we can see that in our everyday life, work, project, somewhere in the news. Maybe you can write on the chat, or you can unmute yourselves. It's all good. No, I have a couple of examples here. Just to start our conversation then. For example, I think it's coming back. Oh no, it's here. Humanitarian aid. I think it's a very good one, and I think especially in the context of all the wars that we see every day in the news, right? What happens? Something emerges, a war or natural disaster, something like that. And then this is a challenge, right? That is, if we can say it like that, is bigger than each individual, is comprehends the whole culture, comprehends the organization, comprehends a lot of things, right? And normally, when we see these things happening, we see a lot of people actually helping each other, people that normally wouldn't talk, people that normally wouldn't collaborate in normal settings, organizations that sometimes don't communicate with others. But then when these things happen, we see diverse organizations and diverse individuals actually organizing themselves in ways that we've never seen before to support the people we need, right? And this is, I think, is a very good way to think about collaboration, because it emerges something, and then a lot of people actually mobilize themselves to come together and support the situation that is going on, right? So it's not everyone just trying to be the right solutions, not everyone trying to craft the right speech or whatever. people mobilize themselves towards action, and then a lot of great support actually happens in this context. So when, again, in complexity, the emergent phenomena happens, and then people are there collaborating in ways that normally they probably or maybe possibly wouldn't do, right? And yes, go on, Braden.
I was gonna just provide a different type of example if you.
Yes.
So I know there are a lot of instances, especially when like there's high levels of corruption and mismanagement in the existing government, where communities kind of devise their own ways of sort of running their own society without using the conventional, like, for example, they may use like an alternate type of currency because their currency is like overinflated. Or, you know, they have their own sort of institutions that they use to run things that are outside the, you know, official nationally recognized channels. And that's like a way their communities at various levels can organize themselves.
Very, very good. So this is, as you're saying, right, very good example of a complex challenge that occurs as we see the interaction through time of people and governments and so on. And then there's a network of support that people actually start to buy into, and then create this overall support net, let's say, that otherwise wouldn't be possible. So going back to it again, I will repeat this word forever, the idea of emergence, that is key to complex challenges and complexity science, that, yeah, as you're saying, and in the humanitarian aid as well, allows people to do things otherwise they wouldn't do. So yeah, that's a great example. Thank you. We have here on the comments, most community-based organizations are made up of volunteers who give their time and skills to benefit the community. Would you like to explore a bit more that idea, Linda?
Yeah, thanks, Yasmin. So basically, this is about community engagement. So how people within a community come together to work together to achieve a certain goal. So in my experience, I've actually realized that some community-based organizations that I've worked with in the past, they're actually made up of people, community members. So it's I was giving that as an example for community engagement.
Okay, so people that somehow are together with the purpose and the values of a given organization, right?
Yes.
And then
yeah. Also the challenge itself. So people are experiencing a particular challenge together and they decide together to say, what can we do? So they bring their time, their skills, and work together to benefit the community as a whole.
Yeah, I love this idea. And this is, you know, this idea of social movements as well that are more related in this case with community engagement and community gathering, as you're talking about, because here people are brought together by not just by specific ideas here and there or anything that is very superficial, right? That something goes wrong and then people just separate themselves and nothing else happens. But during these social movements, people are brought together with values and purposes that are very difficult to be, you know, thrown away like that, right? People here are creating a network of collaboration and of engagement that is rooted in very deep, important topics that are beyond the individuals, right? This is beyond, for example, the the Black Panther kind of movement that happened in the US and across. These people are fighting for something that is bigger than the individuals involved. They're fighting for justice. They are fighting for equality, right? That brings a lot of people together. So as you're saying, Linda, it's about deep-rooted, important issues that cross-pollinate, let's say, individuals from different topics of research, the individuals from different backgrounds and so on. They're there for the overall purpose. So Arsene, you wanted to mention something.
Yeah, thanks, Yasmin. I actually wanted to comment on the example of nonlinear collaboration. As you are presenting, we talk about social movements, protest, humanitarian aid is actually making me think, because I'm now starting to think of looking at my experience of building community collaboration, the challenges that we face in various projects that we've been involved in, where we want to work in a community to say, for example, start a project. And we saw it when we did our agricultural project, where we wanted to support small subsistence farmers to transition into commercial farming. And we did a big job there to really bring stakeholders together and discuss these things, And most of the processes I've been involved in was the key challenge that we've been facing in building those kind of collaboration. We've been around issues around trust, diverse interest and goals, issues around resource limitation, but also more importantly, competing interest. And in my personal experience, that has been a big challenge in doing that work on the ground. But as you are presenting on humanitarian aids or social movement, I'm actually thinking, because it's a good model for emergence collaborative processes, where people just come, like you rightly put it, to say that it link based on certain values that they believe, and when you start to think of issues like, for instance, injustice in the community, in some places I've seen, like some countries, especially here in Africa, or like in sub-Saharan Africa, where, for example, issues of social justice, as Linda was saying, they start with community-based organization, mobilizing through community-based organizations. But then later on, they get the power, they get the influence from, be it government or other competing interests, that will come and weaken those efforts that are being made at the community level. So now, as you're presenting, I'm thinking of what could be the core of issues like social movement and protest. I think that's where we need to be thinking deeply, to see how these things emerged easily like that, and they developed to become a kind of community collaboration initiatives that also drive a certain impact without necessarily being defeated by whichever forces that exist there. So now I'm thinking, if you have to deal with what can we learn from this as we address other issues that also benefit the community, the people at the community level. So those are just some thoughts that I wanted to share. And I see Braden has got some thought. Maybe she's going to expand more on that, or maybe share another perspective.
I was just going to build on what you're saying, just more from like you're saying, what tools, like what specific actions are needed to facilitate things like that. So there are two things that I'm thinking of, like two kind of major steps that need to be focused on. And I think one is more developed than the other in terms of the state of play right now. So I feel like communication, like effective communication, not just kind of like shouting into the void, but like mobilizing people to communicate with each other, whether it's like in person or online, and like reaching people where they are instead of just expecting people to kind of seek information themselves. And then also the deliberation between individuals. So it's sort of information, like the dispersal of information, but also like sharing information with each other. And then sort of networked communication. And then the second part I feel like is less developed, and that's the execution and the implementation. So like when a decision is made, so there's like the communication and the decision-making aspect of it. How will that then be executed? So I guess it would then be three components. So it would be like the communication, like the deliberation and making decisions, and then there would be the execution. So like I feel like a lot of time and effort is spent in that first stage, and then it starts getting shaky when you move into the following stages, like how do we make decisions, and then how do we execute, and who does what. Yeah, so that's just my thoughts on that.
Beautiful. I think Linda wants to comment on that.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks so much, Braden. I think what Arsene gave us the platform to, start thinking deeper about these social movements and how people actually come together. And I was just thinking about when it comes to social movements, mostly people come together around a certain issue. So that's what brings them together. But things emerge. People want to do things differently. We might be having the same same challenge or same issue that we want to address. But now when it comes to how do we address it, people will have different ideas, and those ideas may actually clash. And what you said, Braden, made me think about a certain meeting that I attended. I think it's about 2 years ago. It was on a BRICS summit of the civil society coalition of BRICS in South Africa. And then there are political issues that they differ on, and those issues are really, really crucial. Like they do agree that they have an issue around revenue transparency, and how the government is managing loans and stuff like that, especially after COVID and all. But it's how do we tackle it? They have different ideas, and those differences are coming from political perspectives. And it was very, very difficult. Now, a difficult conversation ensued, and some people actually pulled out of the coalition because they didn't agree with. So the meeting ended with 3 different, groups of people who think things should be done the way that they are thinking. So I think that's the other challenge that comes now with social movements, because yes, we do have a particular issue, but how do we address it? So, for example, when it comes to funding, there are certain organizations that do not take funding from particular countries or funders or stuff like that, because of those funders' political views and standpoints. So when it comes to who's supporting the work that we want to do, and then that person that is not liked by a certain group pitches up, and then the whole thing just crumbles. So yeah, I don't have an answer to how to work that out, but definitely it's an issue that emerges within social movements. Yeah.
Great. And Jessica has a good comment here. Collaboration seems to be innate, but always latent until ignited by extreme pressure to move from resting state to active state. That's quite interesting, Jessica. Would you like to comment a bit deeper on that? If you can.
Well, from the example that you have shared, for the social movements, for instance, it seems that when the issue, it's like more of a knee-jerk reaction. Everyone has, well, we have values within us. We are a community. We love being part of community, and there are values that we share. But then we are always reluctant to work, to collaborate to fight these issues when they're existing. But when push come to shove, then it's ignited. That ability to collaborate, it just happens. Nobody organizes anyone. People just come together and they just all of a sudden have the ideas of how to put this thing together, and they put it together and they deliver something. So it seems that we have it. So maybe we can maybe just think of ways to keep it active, I mean, all the time, not just when something emerges or when the pressure is too much. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. Yeah, as we were talking about in our previous session, right? The idea of self-organization, it's really part of complex environments when people, or individuals, not necessarily people, but when they create a pattern of organization that it's not related to a center of command or any one individual that is coordinating everything. There's a pattern that comes as people work individually in that context, right? So as you're saying, I think it's this power of self-organization that we have as complex adaptive beings that requires possibly a context to enhance that property. And which context is that, right? And you're putting the idea of pressure. Maybe there needs to be a bit of pressure there to ignite that that property, but how much pressure? And as you're saying, maybe can be a bit too much, and then it becomes too structured and no room for creativity, no room for innovation. And then on the other side as well becomes chaos, and then no pattern at all. People can't really organize themselves. So it's this sweet spot that that we need to enhance. That, yeah, I think that's what you're saying. And let's see more comments here. We have Amber. Do you have conversations or creative workshops to get people thinking more and wider? Linda is replying to that. Great. Now, would you like to share your comments, Amber, or any thoughts that you might have?
Yeah, I mean, it comes mainly because I have a background in design.
Nice.
So in design thinking, a huge step is taking the aligned people and first figuring out who should be in the room, and then I guess bringing out what is under what you think the challenge is, and then from those pieces moving past in a creative way, like asking. It takes, I mean, it's not in one workshop, it's not in one day, it's a lot of steps. But I feel like, I don't know if it's theoretical, but it's always messy in person. I was just curious if there are ways that you've been able to use creativity to get people's brains kind of massaged and thinking in ways that we haven't seen yet, rather than the traditional lines we've been seeing. Making these connections and getting the people to have like aha, whoa, this is different. We don't know. This is a little scary. Should we try this space? And then moving actually from that even wider, like that's just the step before and I was just curious what that's looked like, or if you've been able to get the people even in the room to begin a process like that.
Yeah, Linda, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, okay. So I think what happens with, and I'm just focusing on the example of social movements. I think people really don't have the time to get to the designing things do happen. Things just happen. There's an issue, people are getting angry or people are affected in a certain way, and then they decide on what particular action to take, and whoever is available to, you know, have a voice or contribute in any way, bring themselves to the table. So I think that's where the challenge is. And to agree with Ember, I think it would be useful now if by the time that we are now at the table, we now say, okay, these are the people who are interested, who are invested in this particular issue. Let's go back to the drawing board. How do we want to collaborate? What kind of results? What kind of roles are we going to take as actors here? So I think it's the emergence, you know, that happens in, this is just for the example of social movements. I think that's how they come up. There's no pattern, there's no design, really, yeah. So, but
Yeah.
I think it's important to get back now to the design stage and say, let's work it out. How do we want this movement to move? Yeah, for lack of a better word, yeah.
Yeah. And I think Ember, I see that you just joined the community today. This is exactly what we're trying to do in this community as we are expanding. And this conversation the conversation that we're having now is also actually part of that. It's like getting an opportunity to ask the right question that we often don't ask when we find ourselves in like facilitating processes like that. And it's good to hear that you have a background in design thinking, and very happy to have you joining the community, and we will definitely talk. And when there is a need to maybe bring you in a particular process that requires that kind of, you know, that kind of thinking, yeah.
Great. Fru, you had a comment here and you have your hands up. Here with us. You're on mute. Yeah, sorry, you're on mute. We can't hear you right now.
So I was saying, based on my comment, I said people will collaborate based on interest and also if the goals align with what they want to achieve in their community. But anyway, I raised my hand to also highlight something with respect to what Linda was saying based on social movements. Now, social movements, the difference is that social movements, they have a design. The people who want this strikes to happen, they have a design, but they don't have a control of the actions of the people. So that is the difference. They have a design, but they don't have control over actions of people because they come up with an idea, but now people who were not there when they were coming up with the idea now join with their own perspective and also their own line of action. So it is the control of action that they don't have. But in terms of the design, they know why they are going out there to protest. They know what they want to do. But now they cannot control the actions of those that were not involved in the designing process. So that is the difference between social movement and also like collaborations and all of that.
Very good, Braden.
I was just I wanted to talk about sort of combining what everyone's, you know, seems to be talking about, going in this direction about, you know, ways to collaborate, ways to build community, and, you know, the way that you guys are building your own community now, like wanting to collaborate and execute and whatnot. I think that it's really great to bring as many people into the room as possible, like as Fru was saying about, you know, those people who have an interest in solving an issue, and then they're not allowed into the room to have those deliberations and actually volunteer, like maybe their services or the way that they can use their own experience to best contribute to the solution. So I think that in terms of, you know, there's a few of us here part of the Collective Action Network, and we were very interested in working with you guys as you seem to have a very unique context, and it's like learning more about the issues that you guys are working on, engaging with them, and collaborating on them, and building a community together will make it a lot more effective to engage those challenges and address them.
Awesome. Yeah, you can add the link here for more people to get to know your network as well, and see how potential partnerships can emerge and so on. But yeah, I think just moving more towards the end of what I had prepared, and I think we started to oh, you can't see my screen, I guess. Maybe not. Can you see my screen? No. Wait, let me go back to my screen. Oh, I think you're seeing my screen now. Yes, yeah. Great. Sorry. So yeah, I think Brayden, what you're talking about there, it was one of the things that I was thinking when putting this presentation together, is what are some of the considerations or the principles that we could take into consideration when trying to engage a given community towards a specific challenge, right? And that came up to me as well, because recently I've been reading a lot about principles for learning instead of information, right? Bringing people together to learn through principles, which is a lot more powerful than just learning A plus B equals C and then you memorize that and so on. So if we had principles, people could have the freedom to explore whatever it is that they would like to explore, but have some type of a boundary to not go, forever thinking about things that may not be important for that context that they're in. So anyway, to summarize this brainstorming, what you put there, some considerations that we need to have when thinking about engaging people, right? And all of you have mentioned as well. So maybe we can continue in this exploration and think about challenges as well. Okay, we have potential, we have all this great stuff, but then reality is there, right? Reality creates a constraint. So what are the challenges that we can see when trying to do that? So yeah, any challenges that you've experienced before, Brayden?
I know I'm probably talking too much, but I feel like I can answer that question, and then I can also tell you the way in which I kind of like have learned to overcome it. I feel like the way that people see themselves, they focus more so on their differences. And a lot of the technicalities, like they focus more on the technicalities. Like people think of religion as a very big difference, but it's actually quite small. And when you think of the general goals of, any group of people, a lot of it comes down to they want to, have access to, safe housing, food, fresh water, education, like being able to, execute their will freely without any sort of, restrictions on their freedoms and things like that. Like very basic principles that everyone kind of agrees upon. Like no one would ever say like, oh, I refuse to treat other people with respect. That's like, respect is something that's kind of universally valued. It's like, we respect other people, you're polite. Or so you're like focusing on those principles that kind of underline everything, even though people have different visions of what that necessarily means for them, people will be able to connect with that term or that principle and then say, oh, well, like this is how it manifests in this context versus my context. And there's like a shared understanding there of what they're working towards together and the communications that are facilitated that way.
Yeah, I love this idea of the manifestation of the principles, right? I think going back to the iceberg, we're talking about all the, as you're saying, the differences, they are manifested, but maybe we're talking about the same thing underneath all of these discussions. We're possibly putting the same principles across, just in different ways of communicating, in different signs and different symbols and different languages. And culture plays a big part on creating some type of a misunderstanding or misinterpretation, right? So this is a very important part as well, acknowledging the context, in this case, the culture possibly that is creating some type of a barrier in the communication. That's a very good point. Yes, Maria, go on.
I would like to pick up on the challenge of competing forces you mentioned. I've seen, is that, and am I pronouncing well your name? Sorry if I'm not. I so agree with you on that. And what I take, I think that would be a very interesting leverage point to work on is identifying them early, and in a way dance with them. We can't resist them, but I think that we could approach those competing forces that there for me are so many and depend on the context. But sometimes I think also that emergence that come from crises are very difficult to sustain because they don't have the structure. So as opposed to maybe emergence that come from that are aspirational in a way, that have the time for design that Amber was mentioning, or reflection. But what I find really challenging is when, you know, the crisis is chronic. We're not talking about a humanitarian crisis. And then you have to design while doing and surviving and volunteering and no resources and etc. That makes it non-sustainable. So for me, what I stay with to reflect upon is which are these competing forces in the system that do not allow us to, that keep us always, you know, with a head upon the water and don't allow us to actually move or in the direction that we're aiming to, and we're always just in the survival mode. So how can we overcome that, you know, constant or chronic crisis? Because generally those are the ones that really push us forward into action. But how can we make that action more intentional and less survival mode? I'm not sure I'm making any sense or putting or sharing the you know, my idea properly. But for me, that's one of the biggest challenges when it comes to thinking, being creative and designing in a scenario that is very hard to do.
Wow. I see a lot of hearts here. I believe a lot of people are resonating with what you're saying, Maria, because yeah, it's I really love this, what you're talking about. How can we make the action more intentional rather than just reacting on what's going on, right? Something happens, let's react.
Less desperate and more, you know, intentional.
I love that. Linda, would you like to comment? Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to say thanks so much, Maria, for your insights and yeah, your thoughts. I resonate totally with what you just said, and I think it's those crises where things can be difficult. When things are okay, like okayish, you can clearly see that this is the issue, this is how it's going, and that this is how we can work to address it. But when it's a crisis, everybody's head is running in different directions, and it's not easy to get people to be intentional on one goal, because people see things differently. I think this is one thing that I keep seeing, and we keep talking about reflexive thinking. So how does each individual see the world? So how I see the crisis and how you see the crisis might be different. And obviously, the way we would like to respond would be different. So that's where it gets really, really complex. But I think what you said about being intentional, for me, is like the nail that just needs to be hit by the hammer. It's about getting people to be intentional of every action that they are taking towards tackling the problem or addressing the crisis or whatever it is that they're doing together. So being intentional, I think, yeah, it does might actually do the trick here. I think so. Thanks a lot, Mary.
Yeah. The paradox is that the crisis can open doors to possibilities. Things are starting to get very complex here, huh? Wow. Would you like to share a bit more on this paradox, Maria?
Well, I think that as much as, in my experience, when movements, I'm not thinking social movement, when I'm community movement, is generally driven by need. And that need comes out of a crisis. It's this, I think it's the strongest drive, because you can't put any excuse to a need. But when that need is not, but what happens is that when there is no support, no resource, no time, as you are saying, you don't have the bandwidth or the space to see the opportunity. You only see the crisis. So it's changing the perspective. I once told Maria, you need to change the perspective. And it's generally that's where the click and the shift lie. And it's really hard to see, and the same person says, you need to change this perspective to me. The solution lies within the problem. And I was thinking, oh yeah, that sounds very poetic, but I find it's true. But that's a challenge. That solution lies within the problem.
Yeah. Just to start bringing this session to a close. I literally resonate with all the comments here, and I think I could in a way summarize some of the comments by like how aligned are people with the narrative that is being told, right? Because I think, as you're saying, Maria, the narrative of the crisis, of the natural disaster is very clear, right? It's about survival. We need to survive. There's no options there. So everyone got the message, right? And then people are going to organize themselves however they can to achieve that goal, or be brought together towards the narrative or that story that is being told, which is something that everyone feels that needs to be, that is ultimate, right? Being alive and, you know, yeah, being alive. However, I think in other contexts, this narrative may be a bit fuzzy, right? Okay, it's about ending homelessness, but is it really? Like, maybe there's not much homelessness here where I live. Maybe I have other intentions. It's, you know, it's not with me, but I know someone. So some people can bring different interpretations to that narrative because it's not as explicit. So, you know, I'm saying all that because this is actually the topic of our next community gathering. It's about narratives and stories for social change. And hopefully this was a good session to make us think about that and introduce us to more amazing discussions that we're going to have next month on the community gathering sessions. So speaking on that, I will leave the link to the next session here on the link as soon as I can find it. Yes, I can find it. And yeah, we have all these community gatherings once a month, and I will share the link to the presentation with you so you can research a bit more into the resources and yeah, share more with us anytime you want. And it's always very good for us to know more topics that you'd like to discuss in here. So I will leave with you this link for you to share with us other topics that you'd like us to comment, that I will put here on the chat as well. Okay. So as always, the time is very short and your presence is unbelievably special. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here again. And yeah, we'll see each other in the next community gathering. And yeah, thank you for being here today. Love the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yasmin.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.